News Channel 3, Kalamazoo's Edison neighborhood was once the scene for a strip club and X-rated video store, but those have since been cleared out. However, violence has sprung up in its place, which is people who work to clean up the area very upset that it's once again a dangerous place to live. Joining us this morning is Todd Christensen, who is one of the primary officers involved in cleaning up that neighborhood and actually wrote a book about his experiences. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Jessica.
Tell us about yourself.
Well, I worked for the city of Kalamazoo from 1991 through 2012, retired from the early retirements, and since then found that I had nothing else better to do than write about my experiences in Kalamazoo.
As a police officer, I'm sure you encounter a lot of stories every night on the job. So were you patrolling the Edison neighborhood in particular then?
I was actually their community policing officer for 5 years in the early 2000s.
And tell us your examples of what you said, how you tried to clean up the neighborhood back then.
Well, I'll tell you, we had a lot of initiatives back in the early 2000s with a weed and seed initiative. We had an operation Grow Edison, where we removed over 1,000 junk cars, cleaned up the neighborhood, removed the graffiti, got rid of the litter, improved the streetscape, relocated sexually oriented businesses, reduced prostitution, and reduced street-level drug dealing. So we had a big challenge back in those early days.
So do you think the physical cleanup, the aesthetics of the neighborhood actually impacted just the way people were feeling, maybe cutting back on the violence?
I'll tell you, the appearance of a neighborhood has everything to do with violence, crime, and bringing businesses and family-oriented businesses and residents to a neighborhood. If a neighborhood doesn't look good, people aren't going to want to live there.
Is that the premise of your book then?
It's not. My memoir explains the 25 years of what was running through my mind and what I did while a police officer and those experiences that happened to me.
So what's the same as it is today as it was when you were in the neighborhood? Are things same in some aspects?
I'll tell you, I think things have gotten a lot better. I actually drove through the neighborhood before I came here just earlier this week, and the Edison neighborhood looks better than it ever has. I only found one piece of gang graffiti. So I think the city has done a tremendous job, and perhaps the neighborhood association has too, in removing that image of the gang graffiti that used to be all over the place when I worked here. It's now gone.
So if it still looks as good as it used to, then why is the violence still happening?
I think what we're seeing is the public is seeing the reality of juvenile crime. Because if you look at the victims and the suspects of the recent gun violence, they've all been juveniles in the Edison neighborhood. And I think that really brings to light something that it's a young person's problem in the Edison neighborhood.
And how do we fix this young person problem? Do you have any solutions looking back on your experiences?
Well, I'll tell you, kids need to be gainfully employed. They need to have something to do. They need to have quality parental control, and they need to be involved in the community. Roaming the streets isn't the answer. That's just going to lead to problems.
So keeping a closer eye on our children, and maybe in your free time, picking up some litter here and there, maybe if you got a gallon of paint, you know, use it to cover graffiti. What else can you or I do? Maybe people who don't live in the Edison neighborhood that want to help out.
Well, there's a lot of mentoring programs that go on. There's the Boys and Girls Club. The City Park and Recs Department has a lot of activities. We have our own baseball team. And I hear we have our own football team in Kalamazoo. Getting kids involved in mentorship programs and us as adults and residents being engaged with the community. Reading to kids, being involved in the schools, anything that can do positive reinforcement for these kids.
That's some good advice there. And then looking forward, you know, to the future, what do you see happening with the Edison neighborhood?
Well, I think it's only going to get better. Just as anything, if you work at a project and you maintain a neighborhood, like I talked about in the book, you can't just mow your lawn and forget about it. You've got to maintain that lawn, just like a neighborhood and any other city or neighborhood, to progress the economic growth, to sustain it, and vitalize the neighborhood.
All good stuff. Robert, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
And if we want to take a look at your book, Out of the Darkness and Into the Blue, where can we pick that up?
You will find this on Amazon.com. You can also find it on Barnes & Noble online. It's in paperback and Kindle.
All right, thank you very much. We'll be right back with this morning's top headlines and another look at your forecast. Stay with us.